All right, let's jump right into this explainer. We're going to completely bridge the gap between deep psychoanalysis and the books we love to read. If you've ever found yourself wondering why a specific poem moves you to tears, or why tragedies like Antigone have just fascinated humanity for thousands of years, well, the answer might literally lie in the hidden architecture of your own mind. Today, we're unpacking some seriously foundational texts to see exactly how Sigmund Freud's groundbreaking discoveries were taken to the next level by Jacques Lacan, and more importantly, how their connection completely unlocks our understanding of literature.
So it all hinges on this one absolutely famous maxim by the French psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan. He said, "The unconscious is structured like a language." And honestly, this single sentence changes everything about how we view the human mind. For the longest time, people just assumed the unconscious was this boiling pot of biological instincts and dark, chaotic urges, just pure, unfiltered animal drive. But Lacan steps in and argues that, actually, if we look really closely, the unconscious isn't chaos at all. It operates with strict rules, grammar, and syntax. It is an incredibly organized system. To demystify these notoriously dense theories, we'll follow a clear roadmap out of the theoretical woods. 1. The exile from Eden. 2. Freud's foundational unconscious. 3. Lacan's linguistic turn. 4. Metaphor and metonymy. And finally, 5. Unlocking the literary text. Okay, starting with section 1, the exile from Eden. We begin with this massive, dramatic transition we all go through, our fall into language. Think about it like this. According to psychoanalysis, we all start out in a state of primal plenitude. Picture a tiny infant in a perfectly symbiotic relationship with its mother. There's no separation there, it's just complete, absolute satisfaction. But then, we learn how to speak. We enter the world of language, what Lacan calls the symbolic order. And the price of entry? It is immense. It's almost exactly like Adam and Eve being exiled from the Garden of Eden. Entering language literally costs us that original wholeness, that perfect, blissful unity. We can never, ever return to that pre-symbolic, perfectly satisfied origin. It's not just forbidden, it's practically impossible. Now, this is where it gets kind of wild. The actual words and symbols we use, what linguists call the signifier, they operate on us in a very real way. The signifier literally cuts us. It comes into being by marking us with a fundamental lack. Because, right, a word is just a stand-in for a thing. It can never actually be the thing itself. It's always inadequate. And this inadequacy splits us wide open, leaving a permanent gap. Freud originally called this constitutive failure castration. But don't take that literally. It's a psychological cut, a profound loss of power and wholeness. But here's the kicker. Out of this psychological cut, out of our failure to ever get that primal satisfaction back, something incredible is born. The human as a desiring subject. We basically spend our entire lives desiring, constantly trying to fill a gap that was created by language itself. Moving right along to section 2, Freud's foundational unconscious. Let's see how all this builds directly on Sigmund Freud. So, it's vital to note that Lacan didn't just abandon Freud's work. Actually, in his seminal seminars, like his famous one on the ethics of psychoanalysis, he engaged deeply with Freud's core clinical discoveries. Freud was the guy who boldly pointed out that at the origin of human civilization and our psychology lies a fundamental desire that's kept in check by a primordial law, specifically things like the prohibition of incest and the hidden meaning behind our actions. To really grasp this breakthrough, we just have to look at how the theory evolved over a few decades. Think of it as a brilliant three-part equation. First, in the 1890s, Freud gives us part A, the biological drives, and the foundational unconscious, which is all structured around hidden desires and taboos. Then, jumping to the early 20th century, Ferdinand de Saussure gives us part B. He totally revolutionizes how we understand language with structural linguistics. And then, boom, in the 1950s, Lacan brings them together for part C. He takes Freud's discoveries about hidden desires and maps Saussure's linguistic framework right on top of them. It's this massive theoretical pivot that leads him to conclude that the unconscious is language. Building right on Freud's incest taboo, Lacan introduces a concept he calls the thing, or das Ding. Imagine this thing as a glowing, completely inaccessible core that is hidden away behind a massive, impenetrable barrier. That thing? It's that original, impossible core of primal satisfaction we lost when we fell into language. The fundamental laws of human culture basically exist to keep us at a safe distance from it. So our human desire just orbits it constantly, kind of like a planet orbiting a sun, but we can never actually reach it.
It's the ultimate inaccessible center of our psychic universe.
Which brings us to the pivotal turning point, Section 3, Lacan's linguistic turn, where he fully translates Freudian drives into language mechanics.
When Lacan integrated Sauster's linguistics, he made this bold, radical assertion that completely shocked the psychoanalytic world of the 1950s. He argued that human drives aren't purely biological at all. Instead, they're entirely subjugated to the structure of the world of science. Even the libido itself is committed to the play of words. Because we are speaking beings, our very unconscious is literally forced to organize itself according to the laws of linguistics.
So how exactly do these mechanics work in our heads? Lacan alters the classic linguistic algorithm to emphasize the signifier, the spoken or written word, over the signified, the actual meaning or concept behind it. Between them is this rigid barrier that resists perfectly clear signification. This means meaning is never totally fixed. There's this incessant sliding of the signified under the signifier. To put it simply, have you ever tried to tell someone exactly how you felt, but the words just weren't enough? They fell short, right? That is the sliding of meaning. Words constantly shifting, pointing to other words, never perfectly capturing the complex reality they're trying to represent. All right, Section 4, metaphor and metonymy. Let's look at how this shifting language operates practically within our minds.
So the unconscious actually uses two highly specific literary devices to bypass our mental sensors and express those hidden truths. The first is metonymy. This is a word-to-word connection, like saying 30 sails when you really mean 30 ships. You use the part for the whole. In Freudian terms, this is exactly what displacement is, where our forbidden desire slides over to a safer, adjacent object. The second device is metaphor, substituting one word for another entirely to create a sudden spark of new meaning. Freud called this condensation. This is absolutely mind-blowing if you step back and think about it. Our deepest psychological defense mechanisms are literally just utilizing the tools of a poet.
But wait, this begs a really fascinating question. Why on earth does the unconscious speak in poetry? Why do our deepest, darkest, hidden desires express themselves through metaphor and metonymy, rather than just handing us the plain, logical facts?
The answer to that lies in our dreams. Freud and Lacan figured out that our dreams operate exactly like a rebus. Now, a rebus is just a visual puzzle where pictures combine to make sounds or words. Like if you see a picture of a bumblebee sitting next to a picture of a leaf, your brain puts them together to make the word belief. You see, the unconscious mind lacks the grammatical tools for logical limits. It doesn't have words like if, then, or because, so it functions as a form of writing. It strings together visual metaphors and metonymies into these rebus puzzles to sneak past the brain's natural censorship. And that reveals the hidden history of our most secret desires.
And that leads us perfectly into our final section, Part 5, Unlocking the Literary Text. Let's bring it all home. Okay, so if Freud gave us the hidden desires and Saussure gave us the structure of language, Lacan proved that the unconscious is language. Therefore, studying literature, which is pure language, is honestly the ultimate way to study the human mind. Because the mind operates via linguistic rules that are always orbiting that lost primal satisfaction, analyzing a book is basically exactly like analyzing the human psyche. Just look at the traditions of courtly love, where the poet obsesses over this highly idealized, completely inaccessible lady. Or take Sophocles' tragedy Antigone, which brushes right up against the terrifying death drive, or even the extreme transgressive utopian fantasies of the Marquis de Sade. Every single one of these is a brilliant, linguistic attempt by humanity to circle that terrifying, untouchable core, the thing that we can never ever reach. The crucial mechanism that makes all this great art and literature possible is this concept called sublimation. And Lacan gives us a truly beautiful formula for this. He says sublimation is raising an ordinary object to the dignity of the thing. The poet takes an everyday woman, or tragic hero, or just a string of beautiful poetic words and elevates them through language to stand in for that lost Edenic paradise. Sublimation is how we temporarily plug up that painful, permanent gap inside of us, the exact same gap that was created on the very first day we learned to speak. But we always have to remember that language casts a sort of magic circle around us. Because we are speaking beings, we can never return to pure, unmediated nature. We are forever trapped in the symbolic order. Therefore, in art, in poetry, in literature, we only ever have to do with the signifier. We build these incredibly vast, intricate literary fictions using all those metaphors and metonymies just to navigate the profound, unfillable gap that language cut into us. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. If your unconscious is structured exactly like the text of a novel, how are your own everyday conversations, your little slips of the tongue, and the pages of the books you love secretly spelling out the puzzle of your own deepest desires? Next time you open up a book, just remember, you aren't merely reading a story, you are reading the very blueprint of the human mind.